Welcome to another episode of the Me in the Making podcast. I am your host, Melly Clay, and thank you for coming back. This is a show about introspection, self reflection, digging into learning more about yourself, more about your friends, family, community, how it all impacts you, how you would like to move about the world, just learning more about yourself, evolving, growing. That's what this show is all about. And this is season 3 of the Me in the Making podcast. This is the first season that we have had video. So if you are listening to this on audio and you would like to see video, come over to YouTube. The link is in the show notes and you can see me on video. Welcome. Seasons 1 and 2 were about, it's all about the same thing. But I had guests mainly on seasons 1 and 2 where I was speaking to them about their journey, who they were when they were younger, who they are now, how they have come to be who they are now, who they're becoming, all that good stuff. So you can listen back on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, audio version. All of that is on there, accessible for you to go back and listen. There's some really good gems on there. I've talked to some of my really good friends and some people who I was able to meet through the show. We have discussions about life in general and just learning from things that we've been through, trying to apply some of those lessons to where we're going in the future, and we have a really good time. So I highly encourage you all to go back and listen if you are new here. And in season 3, I have been doing some solo episodes, shorter episodes where I'm talking to you about some of the things that I've been learning about myself, kind of digging into different things I've been thinking about and contemplating. So, this episode today, I'm going to be talking about how do we celebrate each other? And through a lot of ways, especially in the Western culture, especially in the US, we celebrate each other as adults. We'll celebrate people if they're getting married. We celebrate people when they're having children. And a lot of times, those are really like the big milestones where we celebrate people. And I've been thinking about this more and more, especially because I'm someone who does not want to have children. I'm someone who is single. So marriage right now is not really on the table for me. And I'm thinking about this not because it's like, when are my friends going to celebrate me? But almost it is. When are my friends and family going to celebrate me as a person? Like when will I get my flowers, so to speak? And this is a vulnerable moment for me to share this with everyone because, sometimes you don't really want to admit that you're thinking about, oh, when is it going to be my turn to be celebrated, to be recognized, etc. So, but I felt comfortable enough to come on here and share this because maybe other people are feeling the same way. And I wanted to give space for other people and to open up the discussion about when it is that we celebrate each other. And of course, you might think, oh, we celebrate each other every year with our birthdays. And I think a good amount of people do celebrate each other with our birthdays, but sometimes it gets harder and harder to do that every single year because, your money might not be right. You might have other things going on in your life where you're unable to show up for that person for that specific birthday celebration that they might be having. I think weddings and bridal showers, baby showers, once the baby gets here, like setting aside time. I think sometimes it's easier to do that because okay, this is this person's one wedding. I will make sure that I show up for them for this one wedding. So you make the time for that. You make the time to go physically there to celebrate, send them gifts, send them cards. But when it comes to birthdays, sometimes it's just impossible to do that every single year. And I think with weddings, that's kind of like your year in review almost, not taking it to be too morbid, not talking about your funeral because you're not there, when your funeral happens. A lot of times that is when people are celebrated, but they're not there to really receive those flowers and to understand how they have had an impact in their friends and families, colleagues' lives. But when it comes to your wedding, that's kind of when you have the opportunity to hear that from those people closest to you when they're coming, they're celebrating, they're so excited that you have found the love of your life and you are choosing to join in and, have those celebrations. And for a long time, people who are in same-sex relationships weren't even able to get married, to have that legal paper. So some people who are in the queer community weren't even able to have that day where they were celebrated and seen by the people closest to them in their lives. So I guess my thinking currently as it stands is that it would be amazing if adults in each other's lives, if we're able to figure out ways to celebrate those loved ones, your friends, family, people who aren't getting married. Maybe they're in long-term relationships and they don't want to get married, or, if they don't have children, maybe they're not able to have children for whatever reason, and they want to feel celebrated. They want to feel seen in a big scale way from the people in their lives. And for me, that's something that I would like to see. I'm celebrated when I have birthdays. Like if you're one of my friends, if you know me in real life, you know that I love celebrating my birthday every year. I'm an Aries, so sue me. But I enjoy having people in my life just come. We have a really good time. But of course, in those birthday parties, you might not be hearing speeches. Maybe it's not a milestone birthday. Maybe, you're just having a party. You're just having a good time, good food, good drinks, good company, and you are enjoying each other. But you might not be receiving speeches or someone coming up to you saying, this is how much you mean to me in my life. I'm so glad that I have you in my life. You're not really getting that during every birthday, of course. People showing up for you, that is a huge indicator that you mean something to someone in their lives, but you're not getting that verbal positive reinforcement. Perhaps, I'm assuming, but in a lot of the birthday celebrations that I have been to, we're not necessarily doing that. And I think if we were to take the time to do that, I think that that would be amazing. But realistically, that's not really happening unless someone is fostering that specifically for that person's birthday. But for someone's wedding, like those speeches that father of the bride, maybe groomsmen, bridesmaids, maid of honor, best man, etc. Those people are standing up and speaking on behalf of the people being celebrated because that's a really celebratory time. And it feels like this is the time to do it. This is the time to really come together and big up our people. When you're having children, that's a major milestone, a huge commitment to be making. And that's an amazing time to celebrate the people who are choosing to make that commitment. So I don't want to take away from people's weddings, people having children. I'm not trying to do that. What I'm trying to do is talk about, are there ways where we can figure out how to celebrate people who are not experiencing these milestones, or maybe that's not something that they want for their lives, but how do we still show up for each other and share with each other like what we mean to one another. My a friend was recently in town and she was telling me how much sorry, stumbling over my words. She was telling me how much she appreciates me being in her life. And those are some words, very simple, not long at all, not overly sappy or anything. That was really great for me to hear. And I really appreciated her taking that time to make it known how it is for me to be in her life. And I reciprocated those sentiments to her as well. And it was just a really nice time to to feel appreciated and to be seen, and have those words wash over me, that was something amazing. So I think sometimes it might even boil down to being intentional about the words that we're speaking to one another, making sure that that person does understand how much they mean to you in your life. And just, taking that time to connect with each other and making sure that people feel seen. I think it's a shift in the way that we think about how we go about our daily lives. Sometimes it's easy to take people for granted. And I mentioned in a previous episode about, is social media overwhelming? Is it overwhelming sometimes to keep up with people digitally who you care about in real life? And, do how do you keep up with them digitally? Do you make sure that you are speaking with them in real life, like really deepening those connections? And because there's so much, everything is overwhelming sometimes, it's easy to not be intentional in the way that we are connecting with each other. It's easy, just to say, "Hey, how are you doing? What's up? How's it going in your life?" And you're not really taking the time to dig deep to see really and truly how that person is doing. And I'm the first one to say that this is difficult to do. There are people in my life who I have not been keeping up with as I should. So this is an indictment to you as much as it is for me to really challenge myself. How am I going to show up for the people in my life? How can I really make them feel seen? How can I give them their flowers on a more frequent basis? Because sometimes those big milestones don't show up for a person in their life, to be honest. Sometimes they might not get a wedding or they might not have children, whether it's their choice or not. How do we then make sure that we are standing up and like showing up for the people who are in our lives who mean the most to us, to make sure that they recognize that and that they see that and that they see that they are wanted and cared for and celebrated? How can we make sure that we're doing that for one another? Because I think, there's the loneliness epidemic going on really for any gender, for anyone, wherever you are after the pandemic. I think that really heightened a lot of things for people to see that, maybe I do feel lonely. Even if I have people in my life, maybe there are things where we're not connecting or I feel misunderstood. It's easy to kind of feel isolated, I feel like nowadays, especially because we are on social media so much and we're behind these phones and I'm making a podcast. I'm not necessarily interacting with people one on one right now when I'm doing this, but I'm hoping that this what I'm talking about right now is resonating with people where it's like, yeah, how do I show up for that person in my life where, we've kind of lost touch, not for any specific reason, but just because everyone is busy. How do I reconnect with these people? How do I show up for them? And maybe some of those things can be reciprocal where we are able to connect and we are feeling cared for and people are showing up for us. And then we have that space to be able to show up for the other person. So I'm taking this as a challenge for myself. We have these next few months coming up, big holidays are coming up, and how do we make sure that we are showing up for each other and checking in with people, seeing how each other is doing, because those big milestones, those big grand gestures, big parties might not show up for people ever. And maybe they do show up for people. Maybe, you went to someone's wedding 10 years ago. And so they're still living, they're still going through the muck and the mire. How do you continue to show up for that person and continue to make sure that these people are feeling cared for? And so, like, we can put that love out into the world and hope to receive that love back so that it can be one big cycle of let's be there for each other, let's show up for each other, let's connect when possible. Even if you make sure that you take 10 minutes out of your day to send a meaningful text to two people in your life, like how big, how present that can be for you in your life. That can be big. That can be a big shift. And you kind of see, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I can take 10 minutes to do this out of my life. I can make this time so that I can show up for someone else so that they can feel special. I have a friend, Brandy, friend of the pod, guest on the show back in season one. If you haven't listened to her episode, please feel free to do that. She actually handwrites letters to friends in her life. She's writing these letters, taking the time, making the time to do this, and sending it off to them, and they can have these nice letters written back and forth to each other, like something physical that they can keep. So that's a way where she's showing up for the people in her life to physically write these letters, what she's going through. I'm sure, well, I'm assuming, but I'm sure she's, speaking life into those letters and receiving that as well from the people who are writing her back. So that might be one way where you are able to show up for people in each other's lives and just kind of bring that love, that little piece of love to share with each other, show each other how much you mean, how much they mean to you, vice versa. I think that that can really make someone's day, make someone's year. To be honest, sometimes those gestures, those small gestures that you receive from someone can really mean a lot. So maybe think about, are there ways that I can show up for someone? How can I show up for them where I'm not neglecting my own needs, but how can I show up? How can I take the time to do this for someone? And that is for me as well. So I would like to move in to my next segment called Pod Corner. And this segment is where I recommend a podcast to you all. I love listening to podcasts. They are very meaningful to me in my life. And I like to share the ones that I really love with you all. And this podcast that I would like to share with you all is called Vibe Check. And this is a podcast where there are three hosts, Zach Stafford, Sam Sanders, Saeed Jones, and they talk about news and culture and how they all make us feel. What's the vibe that we're getting? They check in with each other from week to week to see how their vibe is, to see how it is that how they're doing in this world, in this crazy world that we're living in. And, there's news every single day. There's culture happening around us every single day. How do we tap into that? How do we connect with it? How is it making us feel? How are ways that we can show up for each other to, discuss news and culture? And this show does a really good job of doing just that. And it's generally less than an hour. So it's a really nice way to sum up how news and culture are related, how it all makes us feel, basically. So this is a podcast called Vibe Check, and I really enjoy it because they talk deeply about just different ways of how things are making us feel, talking about how are these things impacting us and how do we move throughout the world with this knowledge in mind. So I would recommend that podcast to you all called Vibe Check. And this has been an episode of the Me in the Making podcast. Thank you all for listening. Please recommend it to friends and family. And I'll see you next week. Bye. This has been another episode of the Me in the Making podcast. Please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Tell a friend, tell a family member. We all deserve to grow and change and become our best selves, whatever that might look like to you. And please connect on Instagram at Making Me Pod, on TikTok. You can email me at meli@makingmepod.com. I would love to hear from you. Let me know if you want to be a guest on the show. And yeah, I'm just having such a great time. I'm so happy to have been able to launch this video episode for you all, and come again. Bye.